What everyone right. Yo, yo. I'm trying to get this microphone to be better, so give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, I think. All right. Does it sound and look fine? Give me the feedback. Desperate for the feedback. Excellent. Okay, so the word on the street, well, not the word on the street. I just decided to buy some more RAFAs. Well, one more. So now I have 3 to do more string testing because nothing really has come out this year that I think is really the optimal solution for me other than these bad boys. So I've prepared a loose test, but I want your feedback first. So one interesting question that I think you should always think about before going for a poly-poly hybrid is relative stiffness. Do you want your crosses to be stiffer than your mains or vice versa, or do you want to go for similar stiffness? So I got some Orange Lynx Tour to be like the stiff string, and then this is Orange Otoro. So this is to go in the mains. And then the soft cross, I'm thinking Ghost Wire to go with the Lynx Tour. And the stiff cross to go with the softer Otoro, I'm thinking Technofiber Ice Code. Does that seem reasonable? Excellent. One sure. And then I assume this comment about the Technofiber 305S, great racket, but I just play way better with my Rafa like every single shot. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Welcome, Andrew member. So you're maining the RF97 and you want a coaching racket. Honestly, a lot of the coaches, if I assume you're with Wilson, which maybe is probably unfair if you're still using the RF, a lot of coaches are just using like Pure Drive Teams, Clashes to coach with, just something light and easy because you're feeding all day. And then if you have like some sort of elite junior that you gotta hit with, or you want to do some serious hitting as part of your lesson, then you just whip out your RF. It's probably what I would suggest for that. I guess RF01 Pro Future would also make some amount of sense if you didn't want something completely different, like going with the Clash, but I don't know. A lot of coaches that I know just want something easy if they're not going to use their actual frame. Okay, I'm going to increase the size of this chat so I can read it better. Okay. Oh, that's too big. That's good. Okay, then we got another question about using Irokranji instead of Ghostwire as the cross. I tried that for a members only video where I did my last bit of poly hybrid testing, and Irokranji does not work that well as a cross string because unless you're extremely diligent with how you weave it to make sure it lays flat on every single cross string, then you run into uneven wear because anytime the string twists, you get a very strong pressure point. So I really did not like that setup. For me, it was like just kind of inconsistent, and I don't want to be spending extra time installing my main string or my cross strings. All right, so this is Otoro Orange. For tensions, I'm going to do no split in this case, just 51 across the board. Okay, so member Keith asks, why do I like sync so much as a cross? Thought on natural gut as a cross with Link's Tour would sync be better. So I had not tried natural gut as a cross until a couple of weeks ago when Luca brought Zverev's sort of setup in a Gravity Tour 100 along, and so that had Hawk Touch main with the cross being natural gut. And for me, it's just an inferior situation. Like, I would way rather natural gut in the main. I feel like you get better spin, better snapback, better overall playability. The feel's better. You get way more gut magic with it in the mains. To me, with gut in the cross, you lose a lot of snapback. You're getting way less spin. It's more of like a crush the ball kind of situation. And overall, I really didn't like it. So for me, not recommending natural gut as a cross. But if your question was, would sync be a good cross for natural gut, then I think the answer is yes. So the reason I love sync as a cross is I got really consistent results with it. So plays really well with all sorts of different strings in the mains. The feel is neutral, slightly crisper than neutral, maybe. It's not ultra crisp, but it's not ultra muted. It's not too soft, not too stiff. Just works in every situation. Compared to other popular crosses like Ghostwire, the control is much better, the spin is much better. It basically increases spin without reducing control in every setup I try it in, without modifying the feel too much. And if it does modify the feel, it usually just makes it a little bit crisper or firmer, which I like. All right. Andrew asks, would the Rafa 290 work well for coaching compared to the RF 01? Also, suggestions lower the swing weight. Yeah, I mean, like, they make Mach 10 in a really thin gauge now as well. If you want something like, because it's so slick, it glides better and resists notching better. I'm sure the Rafa would work as a coaching racket, but a lot of them are still pretty high swing weight, so it might not actually end up relieving that much pain from or that much stress off your arm at the end of the day. It's also pretty stiff, right? So then again, maybe not relieving as much as you want. VL Caswell, I hope I said that name right, about to get the SX300 with Otoro mains, alu crosses, demoed with a full bed of alu. Felt great. Maybe not as much spin. Yeah, so whenever I'm going for a hybrid, I always try to put the slicker string in the cross. I find that leads to better playability overall. So alu power is never really a cross for me. It might work for you, but it won't facilitate snapback as well. Still, though, the SX is a tricky racket to get your string setup kind of dialed in with. So, you know, that setup might work. Like, it's such a high launch angle open pattern racket that maybe you want to tame that with an alu cross. So probably not what I would have gone for as my first choice, but it might end up working out. Channel is fire. Thank you. Game changer and restring sync. I imagine that would work well. I personally don't often go for those extremely shaped strings. The last one I tried was Grapple Snake Aspera Triplum, which is, I guess, the follow-up to Game Changer in a lot of ways. I prefer Game Changer because Aspera Triplum is just like a lot when it comes to how much bite there is, and then when you're dealing with that much bite, it leads to inconsistencies with the launch. So that's one of the reasons I don't like the extreme shape strings. And then the other one is I string my own racket, and it's just not that pleasant to like grind through something so sharp. Yeah. Okay, so for cross strings available at Tennis Warehouse, so you want something slick from T-Dub. They do offer all that Toraline stuff now, so like Wasabi X would be good, but it's not going to be as crisp. I might be looking at Mach 10. I know it's not round, but Mach 10 as a cross string works really well. It's still super, super slick, so it's going to facilitate that string movement. Again, it's a relatively neutral feeling string too, so it should work with a lot of string setups. And then from T-Dub, you could also go for like, I find a lot of the Technofiber strings have like pretty good snapback. Yonex Polytour Fire or Polytour Strike also facilitate good snapback. Those will work as well. So I don't know how to pronounce, I guess, Slavic characters, but what string machine do I use? This is a Gamma F6 X6 FC. So X6 means 6-point mount. FC means fixed clamp. So that's these things. And this was a drop weight machine that I converted to include the Wise tension head. So total setup, this is about a $2,000 setup. $1,000 for the head and $1,000 for the machine, roughly. At least when I bought it, it was around there. Overkill for a lot of applications, but I have to string so often, so it's worth it for me. Would I like to get like a nicer big pro machine? Yeah. Do I have room in this apartment? No. Do I really have money for it? No. All right, so Otoro has gone in, which means Razor code is going in the cross. Here. What is the ideal swing weight for a 4.5 topspin baseline player from Eric Fan? All right. Great question, yet also largely, I would say, misses the point for what I'm trying to do with TennCom. Obviously, I know that people love the concept of best, so I often will put best in my titles, and I'm not the only one who does so. But really, the true answer is there's no best. There's never a best. It's all what works best for you. If there was a best, you bet your butt that there would be only one racket used on tour, only one racket used for every tournament player. For 4.5, I think most 4.5s can handle about a 330 swing weight. Going higher is really going to vary on your fitness and your technique and what kind of setup you like, can handle, and have used in the past. But I would try for most 4.5s to keep it above 320 for sure, if not 325. Generally go with as high as you can handle, and that specifically means going for a swing weight that is allows you to play the shot that you want deep in the third set. If you're a tournament player or if you're just a recreational hitter, allows you to play the shot that you want towards the end of your hit. So if you need to go for a passing shot, you're on the run, you have to flip the ball. If 330 is too heavy for you after, a couple hours of playing and you're in the third set, then you might need to go down to like 327, something like that. That's kind of how I measure, and that's going to change all the time. Like not everyone has their peak fitness all the time. Sometimes you fall off the wagon, so you're not going to have that maximum swing speed that you need late in the game. And then you just kind of got to work back and find it. All right. Which cross string do I recommend for Tour M8 to boost the spin without losing predictability? None. Like maybe restring sync again. But M8 is already pretty slick as it is. I think it's not quite as slick as restring sync, but I don't think you're going to really notice like that much of an improvement changing the cross string with M8. You'll probably have to change the main string in that case. But still, anytime you go for more spin, in most cases, you're going to be losing predictability. All right, what else we got? Different topic. Thought about teaming up with the winners only boys for Vancouver. You bet. So the winners only boys, Trey and Kyle, are going to Chicago this weekend. I am sick of traveling, and I am not going to the United States, at least in the short term, because as a Canadian, I think what your president is doing is deeply hurtful to the global economy, including their own. And so I don't want to be in a situation, I don't want to go spend money in a country that doesn't support my views. Also, don't want to be put in a border situation risk because the increases in kind of like unfair detainments that I've been seeing on the news and stuff. Not that I think that would be a risk for me necessarily, but I'm just trying to avoid it. And then anyway, so that's why I'm not going to Chicago, but the winners only boys are going to try to come to Vancouver, I think in July. We're going to set up a public court tour, take them around, might visit some private clubs too. I know I have at least one hookup that will help us out. Vancouver does have some beautiful private clubs, though they're obscenely expensive. All right. What else we got? So Chainsaw, first name Chain, last name Saw, prefers round strings. Best recommendations for round strings. So restring sync, I love. I really have been enjoying the Technifiber strings. Razor Soft is great, but the durability is questionable. I love Headhawk Power as well, but another one that can wear out a little bit quickly. I like Polytour Strike quite a bit. I could easily use that string. Rattlesnake Tour M8 is essentially round. Like if you feel it in your hand, you can't really tell that it's 8-sided. Similar to RPM Blast is 8-sided, but it feels round to the touch, and so you don't get a huge change in predictability comparing it to a round string. Or comparing those 8-sided kind of flower petal-y shaped strings to a round string, pretty similar. All right, so you're about to demo the Technifiber T-Fight 305S and you're currently using 100G with Polytour Rev. Would that string be fine in T-Fight? Yeah, I think it would be. I think generally, if you're going to try a racket, you should try it with a string that you know if you can. Most strings don't play absolutely horribly in one racket and great in another racket. That's pretty uncommon for the most part. But if you can try a string that you know, then you can kind of isolate the variables. Like, what is the racket doing for me versus what is the string change doing for me? Recommendations for a good VCore 100 hybrid. With the VCore 100, I think I actually only tried one string, which was Head Link's Edge, which is discontinued, and it was good. Confidential has always played great for me in the VCores. With Confidential, you can go to Wasabi X in the cross to get like softer feel, more ball pocketing, a little bit of a deeper sound. Or you can go to Restring Sync to keep largely the same feel, but also increase the spin and durability of the setup. But I would say generally, like, poly hybrids are more about for fun. Like, you should have fun testing them. But I don't think in most cases you're going to see serious advantages unless you're limited to a certain string selection. So, like, if you're a sponsored player and you can only use head strings, then you have a limit on your options. And so going to hybrids, if you have a limit on your options, can open things up a little bit. So maybe you really like Headlink's Tour for the feel, but you want to soften it up a little bit. And because Head doesn't really have anything that's both soft and crisp, you could put Link's Touch and the crosses of Link's Tour, and then you'd get a crisp feel that's a bit softer. Whereas if you didn't have the sponsorship limitation, then you could just go to like Tour by Soft or Grapple Snake Tour Sniper or something like that. All right. Thoughts on Black Code 4S? I haven't tried the 4S, but I absolutely love Black Code. I would say Black Code is my favorite of the Technofiber strings. Again, I think the durability could be improved. Like, I tore through the sets that I had. But playability, I like the feel, I like the playability, like the spin I can get. I imagine 4S is just a little bit more spin, a little bit more launch, which I don't think I really needed compared to regular Black Code. Sani Anto says, did not like Confidential due to the feel from stringing it at 58 pounds. So here's another point that I'd like to make. There are certainly reasons to string high, but like, why have you set up these conditions that you need to string that high? Like, is that just because you're used to stringing that high? Is that because you've chosen a racket that launches too much? Maybe you should have gone for a tighter pattern. So in all situations, I try to string as low as possible. I'm stringing at 51 right now, which is not that low, but I think when you consider how powerful a racket with such an open pattern, and then usually I'm using Otoro, which is a relatively soft string, I don't think it's like that. I think it's like relative. I don't think I could go any lower. I could try stringing at 45 just to see what happens, but I find that I start to struggle changing direction. All right. Thoughts on very low tension ultra cable? Again, this is a situation of the extremely shaped strings, which have compromised directional control and significant launchiness, which you're only going to make worse by stringing low. So this is not a setup that I would go for, but if you're the kind of player who you're not taking the ball on the rise, but you're taking it either at the peak or on its way down, then I think a low tension ultra cable makes more sense, but you're going to have a hard time cutting balls off, taking it early, unless you have really good hand skill or you really, really know what to expect out of your racket. That is probably not a setup that I would choose or recommend to the majority of players, but I don't want to yuck your yum if you're into that. Lucas Aviation says, yo, what up? I assume that's exactly how you wanted me to say that. You just got the Pure Aero 98 and you're unsure what strings to put in it. Anytime you get a new racket, my blanket suggestion is go for the string that you used to use. Go for the string that you know, and then adjust from there. So if you've always used RPM Blast, go with RPM Blast in the new racket. Maybe you'll go, this is perfect. You don't want to change anything, but maybe you'll go, I wouldn't mind if it was a bit softer, a little bit more spin friendly. And then I can say, okay, so you like the feel of RPM Blast, but you want something softer, a little more spin friendly. Maybe then you go for like True Pro Black Knight or something. And then, you know, we just continue to make small changes with every string job until you're happy. All right, what's next? Tourline Absolute as a cross is underrated. Interesting, Johnson. I've only hit Absolute once. It was quite a long time ago in a pure Strike VS, and I thought it was fine. Not offensive in any way, but it didn't blow me away. I haven't tried it as a cross, but I do want a black cross because I think Ben Shelton's setup is like the best looking setup on tour. Black cross, neon main. I think it looks epic. What are my thoughts on Dunlop's tennis rackets? So I like how Dunlop's rackets are coming in at a lower price. However, my ultimate concern is that maybe their graphite modulus isn't as high as the other brands. And the reason I say that, before, you know, just looking at the face of it, based solely on the price, I wouldn't have made that assumption. Like, I would have just assumed Dunlop's going to accept a lower margin to try to increase their sales and hope that they make more money as a brand that's overlooked by many people. But, you know, when I'm hitting with the CX200 and I get it weighted up, big swing weight, my ball is just overall slower, less heavy. The racket is giving me less. It's harder to redirect my opponent's pace with that racket. And it's not like that was a soft racket, noodly racket. It had a level of stiffness still, but it didn't have the same energy return that I expect from your typical mainstream racket. And so that really changed my perspective on Dunlop rackets. And then the other point of contention that I have is their mainstream models, they're coming in with such low swing weights now, like in the 315s strung. So you have to do like significant customization for a vast majority of players to get anything playable. Like, I don't recommend 315 strung swing weight to any level. Like, only in like extreme situations where like swing speed is a complete struggle for the player, or if weight has proven to be a significant issue. But those two things make them harder and harder for me to recommend, even though, you know, I think this SX300 Tour is a great racket. It's probably the racket that Simon is playing his best tennis with now. And I don't quite have the energy return issue with that frame that I had with the CX200, but it's still missing a little bit of punch, in my opinion. All right. Please kill me once the comparison between soft at high tension and stiff at low tension. Generally, stiff at low tension is just going to give you better tension maintenance. So I would usually recommend that over soft at high tension. And that's basically, I would say, the only thing to consider. My Wise has always been creaky, but a friend of mine suggested that I grease the thing. So I got to open it and grease it up. Yeet Tennis. Do I think restring sync is a viable option for most rackets? Yes. Generally, it's like the first string that I put in any demo racket or any new racket to me to test out. Although lately I've kind of been breaking that rule just because I got bored of it. So I personally find that if it doesn't excite me to put it in, then I'm just not going to do the task that I have to do. So if going to a string that looks cool with a racket is the motivation that I need to actually string the racket, then I'll do it. But yeah, sync has never played like offensively bad for me in a full bed. It's always at least fine and always playable. All right, so that's the first racket done with Otaro Orange, and Ice Code at 51 pounds. Gauge on Ice Code was 125. Gauge on Otaro 123. All right. Jonathan Vu asks, when did I start? Do I have a starting framework for learning how strings play or feel? That's an interesting question. I assume that's if you want to start evaluating strings for yourself. And I always have a hard time tying knots and reading questions. Okay, so if you want to start out to try to evaluate strings, the first thing you need to do is figure out what's important to you in your setup. Some people really value spin. And then you can go, let's say, you're only really basing your search on the best string by which gives you the most spin. And you try 3, and then you'll go, this gives me the most spin, but I didn't like it because of maybe it feels too firm compared to like string number 2. So then you realize, okay, I really like spin, but I don't like it when a string is too firm. And then you're adding another criteria. So generally, I would say add one criteria at a time as you try more and more strings and see what works for you. If you're looking to present that information, then it becomes a very different story. So like for me, I just used Golden Set Snakebite for years because it was cheap, had good spin, played fine. And then when I started working at Courtside Sports, the tennis store, I had the opportunity to start trying a lot more strings because before that, I was trying to save money. I was a student, I didn't care. But then working at the store, suddenly my access goes up. I don't need to pay for string labor because I can string my own. Then I go down this rabbit hole of what's the best string setup, and I'm like, I want spin, but I also want a long dwell time to increase the ball pocketing. So I'm looking through the Tennis Warehouse string database, trying a bunch of setups of the stuff we've got at the store, kind of trying to figure out what I like. Obviously, I get influenced reading the Tennis Warehouse forum when I'm a kid, like, reading the opinion of players who I assume to be better than me, though I don't, of course, actually know because not everyone posts videos of them playing. And they're like, yeah, this setup is magic, and then this setup is not good. So then I would just try what people would recommend, and then you kind of develop your own preferences. And the most important thing is to just have fun with it. As soon as you stop having fun with the testing, then what's the point? All right. Best confidential alternative with better ball pocketing. I would say like Tour Sniper is going to give you the same, if not better control, more ball pocketing, but it's going to give you a crisper feel, so it won't be quite as dull. So if you wanted to like really get nitty gritty, you could probably go like Tour Sniper mains, Wasabi X crosses. You would end up with a similar amount of crispness, but much softer, much more ball pocketing, and a similar level of overall control. Probably a hint more power with Wasabi X and the cross. All right, so this is Lynx Tour Orange going in. How difficult? Chase Harrington asks, how difficult is it to string? You think it would be fun, but would it be a chore, especially with a weighted stringer? I assume you mean a drop weight. So stringing is not difficult. it's repetitive, yeah. You need to be willing to accept things that are quite frustrating at the start, as with anytime you're learning something new, you have to be okay with frustration. But your first couple of jobs with a drop weight stringer, 2-3 hours. It just takes a long time to get used to the motion, to get a rhythm going, to get used to weaving. And then what starts to happen is, you do a couple, take a really long time, then you're almost done and you realize you've made a mistake, and then you have to go back, and then maybe that adds an hour to your labor time. I would say it depends on you, of course, but it will probably take 10 to 20 rackets to get into, like a 45-minute range with the drop weight. And then from there, you really have to be consciously refining your technique to get anywhere close to like 30 minutes with a drop weight. And so that's kind of the time commitment you'll be looking at with the drop weight. Probably fine if you're doing once a week or less, but going to be pretty frustrating if you have to do more than that. And if you're doing more than that, you could look at a crank to save time, but cranks are less accurate than drop weights. Drop weights can actually be the most accurate if you yourself are very accurate with dropping the weight. Or they can be horrifically inaccurate if you yourself are a bit sloppy with dropping the weight. All right. Best polyhybrid, okay. Kai Kimura asks about bumping up tension. I don't bump up tension on knots because the Wise doesn't automatically come with that. It's something you have to program into it, and I've just been too lazy. I don't think it matters that much whether you bump up or not. You should just be consistent with whether you're doing it. So if you're owning a business, obviously you've got to go, we're bumping up every time, or we're never bumping up unless the customer specifically asks. If you are just doing your own, do whatever suits you. If you need to bump up 20% to feel like you're getting good knots, do it. Maybe you're not tightening down your knots enough if you feel like that. But wherever you're tying off, that string is going to be shorter than the longest string. So the last main is the shortest main, and that's why I'm personally not too obsessed with bumping up my tension. If you look at these rackets that I string, it's not like the outside mains are being pushed way outside. They hold the grid just fine. So that's why I don't care. What are the best Canadian online retailers? I probably am not really supposed to answer that question given my Tennis Warehouse affiliation, but Tennis Giant, Merchant of Tennis, Racket Guys, those are all ones that I've shopped online. I get stuff from Courtside Sports, but that's because I know people there. Pretty much the only reason at this point. A lot of the Canadian retailers struggle with their online portion of their business. And so I think Merchant, Racket Guys, and Tennis On, Tennis Giant are probably the best for online shopping. But I would recommend you support your local businesses if you can. So whoever's in your town, a lot of times they'll be able to special order you stuff. And that's what I used to do when I worked at Courtside Sports, which was a pretty small shop. When I worked there, their online store was much better, and now it's not great. They don't keep stock updated on there. They don't add new products on there, which can be frustrating. Do colors really matter that much? Will Orange Lynx Tour play that different from Champagne or Black? Sometimes they matter a lot. Sometimes they don't matter. Lynx Tour, I think it matters quite a bit. probably more than most other strings. Champagne, for me, by far the best. Champagne, gray, black, orange. The only reason I got Orange Lynx Tour in this case was to match colors with Otoro. Poly Tour Pro is another string where I think it matters. Yellow is clearly the best. Babolat RPM Rough, yellow is definitely the best again. Generally, I think the difference is pretty subtle, but like if you're going for something that has a strong, like orange, to me, orange strings are generally more muted. Black strings are more muted. Green strings are more muted, but can be a bit softer. Silver strings and gold strings and metal colored strings are crisper, a little bit more connected. White strings are also generally quite raw. But I also don't know if I would notice it in all rackets. In a racket like this Rafa with no damping tech, it's a lot easier for me to feel the difference between colors. But if I was testing in like a Dunlop, maybe with like a Dunlop SX300 Tour, maybe I'd notice it less. If I was testing in the VCore 9 gauge, I think I wouldn't notice it really either. All right, member Rick Provost asks, I played against a guy a couple days ago with a Percept 97H with Masabi main PT Fire Cross. His shots had so much weight and spin. You know, it's, yeah, if you play someone using a heavy racket and they step in on every shot, it's hard to beat. Like, mass transfers energy so effectively. And that's one of the reasons, like, I find myself often recommending heavier rackets to players because, you know, it's one thing to generate power from swing speed, but are you going to be able to generate power from swing speed if you're physically feeling tight because you're in a tournament setting? Are you going to generate power from swing speed if your footwork isn't perfect? No. The faster you swing, the lower the margin of error is in terms of your positioning because your contact window is shorter. I would say the guys that I've played that hit the heaviest ball, they don't always have the heaviest rackets, but they're usually pushing like 330 plus swing weight. Tamagon Bagel says yellow strings are goated for some reason. I would say yellow on average, your hit rate's going to be pretty high, yellow and silver. If you had to simply buy based on color and then generalize what's the best. Okay, I need to clearly widen this hole. Lynx Tour is so thick. Like, this is 125, and I'm not easily busting through these worn out grommets. Brett Stewart, any recommendations similar to Kirschbaum Orange in value that isn't orange? Can't you get Kirschbaum Orange in other colors now? But also, Tennis Warehouse P6 is like my #1 value string. $8 a set. Not available in reels yet, but I think they're coming. It's like silver Hyper G with better tension maintenance, and it plays so well. It's so well rounded. Easily the most underrated string on the market. Jean-Pierre Uis, I don't know how to say your last name, asks, Lorenzo Musetti plays with Hawk Touch mains, Lynx Tour crosses. My thoughts. I believe he uses Hawk Rough mains. So rough mains, Lynx Tour crosses. I don't get it. Yeah, I'm sure it plays well. Like, I'm sure it plays well. Hawk Touch / Rough and Lynx Tour are both quality strings. Why exactly go Lynx Tour and the cross? I don't know. It would be an interesting one to try for sure. All right, so we're going Ghost Wire and the crosses of this stick. What do I think about stringing the Gravity Pro with Restring 0? You're gonna end up with a very muted experience. So I strung the last gen Gravity Pro with Restring 0 for my review back when I often only did one string job on a racket because I was limited with my budget. Not that I'm unlimited now, I just have the freedom to do more rigorous testing. And it does lead to like an overall extremely muted experience. I don't think you really have the control issues because the Gravity Pro itself provides so much control. So yeah, I think if you want more spin, good power, and you're fine with a very muted feel, that would be good. If you're not fine with a very muted feel, maybe try put like tour bite in the main and leave Restring 0 in the cross. You'll still get a lot of bite on the ball, but also a lot of snapback. My opinion, RPM Blast mains, Polytour Pro crosses. RPM Blast mains, I think would be never anything that I would ever choose. Polytour Pro cross, I would only choose for a flatter player. So Polytour Pro has bad snapback, so then I'm not often putting it in a cross if I'm prioritizing spin. I'm only putting it in a cross if I'm prioritizing control on flat balls, like good depth control and good touch. But then you're kind of losing that with RPM Blast. So I just don't think they really suit each other that well. And thus I would not recommend. My opinions on Otoro Tour and Otoro Spin. You love Otoro, and we're thinking of buying Otoro Tour because so I just posted for the members a comparison between the colors of different colors of Otoro to Otoro Spin and Otoro Tour. Out of respect for the members who paid to watch that video, I'm not going to completely leak everything, but Otoro Tour is my current favorite string, period. In this raft, it was absolutely phenomenal. Better control than normal Otoro, and then Otoro Spin compared to normal Otoro. For me, it's mostly just a launch angle difference, with Spin having a higher launch angle due to five-sided shape. Otoro Alternative. You love its spin, but it's way too soft for me. You got to go Otoro Tour. That's like the obvious one. It's so annoying how heavy. Yeah, I agree. It's really annoying how heavy Link's Tour is. But I do like the variation, having that option for some players. And you can always go with something like Rattlesnake Tour Sniper with my affiliate link in the description to get a very similar playing experience without having all that heaviness. If you want something more forgiving, I've got Grapple Snake Alpha as well, which I think is also a pretty underrated, overlooked string for all-around performance. What string would I recommend for a 2020 Prestige MP? Going to try Toro Toro Absolute, and you've tried Otoro and Super Toro. It depends what you want, obviously. Like, do you want a more muted experience? Then stick with the Toro lines that you're testing. If you want something a little crisper, probably look elsewhere. I personally would probably string that with, I think the Grapple Snake Alpha that I just mentioned would play absolutely amazing, because it's going to give you that like crisp connected feel that you're looking for from a classic racket, both a little bit more power, a little bit more forgiveness than your typical suspects like Alu Power, like Tour Bite, like Link's Tour. Ross Murray says, my daughter loves Otoro White in the mains and Matcha Enzo Pro in the crosses. Would I suggest something similar to last a bit longer? Because you're breaking Otoro after 6 hours. I guess like Toro 127. Otoro Tour also, for me, lasts quite a bit longer than normal Otoro. It is stiffer, which means it might eat up Enzo Pro as the cross, or it might be too uncomfortable, but you could also string it lower to offset the stiffness. That's probably what I would do. Either Toro thicker and string it 2 pounds lower because it comes in 127, or Otoro Tour and also string it 2 pounds lower. All right, so you tried Otoro on the PA98 and felt very launchy, but so you need more control. Otoro Tour would be more control. But also, here's my opinion on launchiness. You can have high launch angle and you can have low launch angle. And I feel like a lot of people look at a string setup, and if the launch angle is high, they call it launchy. But for me, that's fine. If I know a launch angle is going to be higher all the time, consistently high, but what's important is that it's consistently high, then I see that that's predictable. I can just change my inputs as a player, aim a little bit lower, and get great playability. So if you're frustrated that your string setup launches the ball too high, that's on you. If you're getting inconsistent launches, so you try to lift the ball and then it launches quite a bit higher on one shot, and then you try to lift the ball on another shot and it plays normal, or there's a lot of variation between launch angles. So you hit flat and you get a really low response, or you try to hit spin, you get a really high response. That's what I call launchy. So inconsistency of response. If you have something that just has a higher launch angle and you want to lower it, you just string tighter. If you have something that has a lower launch angle and you want to raise it, you just string higher. But if you have something that has inconsistency with launch or very variable launch depending on your input, that's when I call a string launchy and suggest it has bad control. I personally don't think Otoro is launchy. I think it's incredibly predictable, one of the most predictable strings with such a high spin rate, and that's why I use it. So for me, if you're getting an inconsistent response with Otoro, it means generally your swing speed is not high enough. So you need to go to something that is more forgiving to your swing speed. And so maybe I'd recommend Slinko Mach 10. Same super slick feel, a little bit more of a through the court kind of launch, and a lower bar in terms of accessibility to swing speed. Okay. Jean-Pierre member asks about Otoro Tour being more stiff than Lynx Tour. I would say they're pretty much in the same realm. The tricky thing is Lynx Tour, you're not really going to get in the same gauge as Otoro. So Otoro is 123, Lynx Tour in 17 is 125, but it plays thick, like it plays like maybe a 128. So I would say because of that thickness, you're probably going to get an overall stiffer feel from Lynx Tour than Otoro Tour. I get a little bit frustrated with these string names all being pro this, tour that. They're kind of a mouthful. Sani Anto asks, how long have I been playing? My dad played tennis, so I've always had tennis around. Like, I've had my own racket as long as I can remember, like would have hit my first balls immediately. And so I always went to like tennis camps as a kid. Not always, so maybe since grade 3 or so. But I didn't play my first tournament until I was 13 years old. So I didn't take it. I fell in love with tennis, I would say, in grade 5. So I guess you're 10. and I would just play with a foam ball against the garage door, and I didn't really need to play with anybody. And then it was like summer between grade 6 and 7 that I started or it was in summer between grade 6 and 7 that I started taking lessons indoors during the winter. And then, no, obviously not. It was during grade 6 that I started taking lessons during the winter and taking it more seriously. It was still never that ultimately serious. And then I played my first tournament and won my first tournament between grade 6 and 7. And then I started playing like all the time. And I think I improved a lot between that time and 16. And then I didn't improve very much from 16 until almost 20 or past 20. And then I've improved a lot more in the last year. My general thoughts on vocal V square is that I've never tried it, but I don't generally like square strings, so especially if they have sharp edges. Which I actually don't know if V square has very sharp edges because I've never tried it or strung it or anything. Best full poly for E-Zone 100 2022 with good tension maintenance. Like string maybe that has the best tension maintenance would be Luxilon 4G. So if you want to do Luxilon 4G, you could try that. It's going to be way stiffer. If you want something that is just like Caviar, but has better tension, or just like Polytutor Pro, but has better tension maintenance, and you don't mind going to a shape string, then I like Toroline Caviar a lot. You can also try pre-stretching Polytour Pro to see if that gives you better playability duration. Jimmy wants to know about... Okay, you guys need to stop. You need to stop asking what is the best string setup for a certain racket. There's no best string setup for one racket. If there was, you wouldn't need to ask me. If you want my opinion on the best string setup for your Pure Aero 98, you have to tell me what you're actually looking for. And what you've tried before that you liked and didn't like. Then I can actually be helpful. Otherwise, you're just going to hear what I like in the racket, which maybe is what you want to hear, but I also have videos for a lot of these. Anyways, but to answer your question of what is the best string recommendation for the Pure Aero 98, Otaro is great. I like Wasabi in it. Ultimately, don't find that racket to be overly string sensitive. And I do 2.5 grams on each side of the throat. All right, members. Did 2 people just join the member? Is this what this is? Matt and Mark, thank you so much for joining. I assume that's what that means. It's kind of crazy that you both just joined. Was there a pop-up or something? No idea. Anyway, thank you for joining the membership page. I hope you enjoyed the membership videos. There's like quite a few on there now. Okay. Best strings to complement a V-Core 100 for a 3.0 player. I don't know, Lynx Touch. I like Lynx Touch for barely 3.0s. Lynx Touch is an elastomer string with a polyester wrapping. So that elastomer gives you a lot of comfort, a lot of forgiveness off center, a lot of power, but it has polyester wrapping, so you can find that snapback and learn how to find that top spin a little bit. Also, Nathan suggests Tour M8 for the E-Zone 100. And I also think that is a great suggestion. Should complement the crisper feel on the last gen E-Zone, great tension maintenance out of N8 for a better value than you get with 4G at a more comfortable stiffness and easier access to spin. So excellent suggestion. My favorite setup for the eZone 100 was probably P6, Tennis Warehouse P6, or Grapple Snipe Tour Sniper with Sync Crosses. And sooner rather than later, I will also be trying Toro Tour in that one, because it does match the accent, the teal accent. And so assuming that's good, that will be as part of a video of best string racket and string combos for 2025. Okay. So JV, about natural gut, if you don't break strings, natural gut will hold tension and play better for longer than almost anything. But if you are a string breaker, then yeah, it can add up really fast. Oh, Daddy, Richard Daddy-O Greenwood wants to know about Polytour Spin Mains, Polytour Pro crosses. So Simon and I tried that in the first year of TennCom, and it was brutally unforgiving, like an absolute board. Polytour Spin, anytime I've tried it, it's been like pretty demanding. The snapback's not great. It feels like thick. It's hard to weave actually, because it's quite gritty, the texture. And then Polytour Pro, also the snapback's not great. So you really have to work to find the spin and find the snapback on your poly. Like Casper Ruud takes massive rips at the ball, so he's creating that snapback and finding that string movement because his inputs are so hard. I think I would probably like that setup a little bit more now that I hit harder more consistently and I'm a better player overall. But at the time, I thought it was incredibly boardy and demanding and tough to use. Abe, member for 3 months. Get confused when people describe strings as lively. When I describe a string as lively, I mean two things. That it is relatively powerful. Well, I'll tell you all the things that I think of. I think I maybe mean more than two things. So to me, lively is powerful, and it feels powerful. The ball kind of comes out of the string bed with what feels like a lot of energy. You get decent vibrations through the handle, so you can feel what's going on the string bed. It gives you that communication. Same way as like if you think of a lively person, someone who has lots of energy, so your strings would also have lots of energy. Someone who's a little bit chattier with you, like your strings are telling you what's going on, and someone who's kind of easy to be around. So for me, a lively string should be a bit easier to use because of that power. So a string that I would consider to be lively would be like Diadem Solstice Power. It gives you that ball connection, a little bit of power, crispness in terms of your response. I think True Pro Ghostwire would also be a string that I would consider lively. Lots of power. You can feel the ball come out of the string bed like very zippy. But that's just what I mean. I don't know if everyone is as consistent with their diction as I am, or if they have different meanings. But that's generally what I get. And when I'm referencing that work, I'm usually referencing like what I get from Chris Edwards. And for what I've synthesized, his string reviews and in comparison to my personal experience with those strings. Signum Pro Firestorm I would consider lively. I would consider Tour Bite soft lively, even Tour Bite as relatively lively, even though the power is not necessarily huge. Do I ever hit with multis? Gene asks. No, I don't. I hit with some multis about 18 months ago for a hybrid stringing video, and I think if you have modern technique, like they're generally just flat out inferior. I can see why some people would like them, but my ball speed goes down, my spin rates go down, the heaviness of my ball instantly tanks. There's a ton of shots I can't play with multi that I can with poly. As a person who has basically used poly his entire life, using multi, well, I like the feel of it. It's like enjoyable to like hit. The actual product of my ball is way off base. Okay, so I've now done the strings that I have to do for the next thing. So let's leave it up to you to decide what we string next. Option 1 would be this brand new Pure Aero Rafa that I recently acquired, which is matched to the other ones, but we could put some hybrids that Eric from Toraline sent for me. Oh wait, that's not those. That's these. So this one is Otoro Tour in the mains and normal Otoro green in the crosses. And this one is Otoro Spin white in the mains and normal green in the crosses. That's one option. We could also put Confidential Pink Soft in here because I do need to test this. Or we could string up the Gravity Pro, the Gravity Tour, the Gravity MP. Tour probably less of a priority than the Pro and the MP, which I still need to review. We could string up the E-Zone 100 with Otoro Tour. We could string up either of these Diadem Axes. We could string up the Prototype Blackout with something other than Confidential Pink. Or we could string up Simon's SX300 Tour. My comments on Toraline Absolute are neutral. I thought it was relatively forgettable and didn't try it that extensively. What would I recommend to someone who loves RPM blast in a full bed, but you get arm pain? I guess like Black Knight, even though it gets pretty soggy, you could just try putting Link's Touch in the crosses and see if like that's enough for you. RPM Team, that's what Carlitos put in his arrow when he was having arm pain. Syngut mains and poly crosses, I have tried that. All right, so we've got 2 votes for the Rafa with Otoro Tour Hybrid. We've got 1 vote for the Gravity MP, 1 vote for Simon's SX. The next comment that I get will decide it. Okay, so how does Syngut mains compare to full poly or full Syngut? Playability lasts longer than with full Syngut. It's more forgiving than full poly. You get way worse spin, especially after you start fraying the nylon. The reason that, like, you may think I don't hit very hard, or you may think I hit very hard. But even when I hit significantly less hard than I hit this year, I would wear out Syngut in the mains or in the crosses in 30 minutes. And I'd be losing. It wouldn't break in 30 minutes, but I would notice significant reduction in spin because the string would start to fray. So I think for most players, even at this stage, because I think a lot of recreational players have significantly improved their game compared to like 5 years ago. For most players, I'm recommending now like a soft poly or a kind of like internalized hybrid like Link's Touch, Hyper G Soft, Tauroline, Toro, strings like Slinko Mach 10, strings that are soft and slick. So the player is still getting quite a bit of power and forgiveness, but can find a little bit of topspin, because topspin is what makes tennis in 2025. All right, so Toro's and so Kevin, no, I do not think it is worth messing around with nylon this year unless you are like not learning the modern topspin technique. I have tried Aspera in the Rafa and it was terrible. The only setups I've tried in the ATS Tour are whatever Oak had at the time in his frame, and then Otoro Orange Sync crosses. That Leandro, interesting video title. That's actually interesting. That's relatively motivating. Thank you. Okay, so I've decided to not listen to any of you because I don't have a consistent... Well, no, I've decided to listen to the person who says I should string up Simon's racket because he does need strings. I guess the next question is, what string should we give Simon? What was in here before was Razor Soft, which he loved, but it wears out so fast. Need good control to tame this SX300 Tour's launchiness. Need decent tension maintenance because Simon's pretty sensitive to that, and good notch resistance. Aspera is so grippy. So like if I was only hitting through on neutral balls, obviously I can find the control that I need, but if I had to like lift a ball up, I got a very different response than what I was expecting. So lifting up low balls, I guess there's so much grip, it just bottom of the net every time. And then trying to hit through high balls would just skyball to the fence. So I found it relatively unpredictable, or at least the string was just so extreme that it behaved so differently than other polys that the adjustment period for that string was simply not worth what I wanted to put into it at the time. So I understand that not every string is going to be pick up and play, and sometimes you got to like work to spend a lot of time with the string on court to figure out like how does this string want to respond. And you know, I test a lot of stuff. I can generally figure out anything in 5 minutes, honestly, like the response of things. That string left me questioning my entire life. Still after 30 minutes, I was still not figuring out like what kind of inputs worked for it and what kind of outputs I should expect given my inputs. So I just really didn't like using it. So I cut it out, just hit with it once, cut it out, didn't want to keep going, didn't want to make a review because it was unpleasant for me to use. All right, give Simon the most ridiculous color combo possible. Simon does love Ghostwire crosses. But I think that's going to be too powerful for this frame, to be honest. It worked really well with the whiteout when he needed a little bit of boost and power, but for this, I don't think it's going to work. Okay, what do you think would be the most hideous AC Tennis Prince Synthetic Gut for Simons combined with the recommendation for hideousness? Diablo Prism. This isn't the Sin Gut one. I got the Prince Rainbow Singut, which I could put in here and just ruin his day, but then I would have to string it again immediately. So I could put Diablo. Yeah, okay. We're gonna do it. He's not gonna know what hit him. No, I should probably save this. I might save this for. Okay, so my girlfriend of 10 years has never played tennis with me outside of in gym class because we met in high school. But because Selenko is doing a Brain Dead collab, no, I can save this for her. No, Simon is getting this. But I'll continue my story. So she's never played tennis with me ever. Which is lame. But because Selenko's doing a Brain Dead club, she's like, the Brain Dead racket is my racket. And I was like, so you're going to play? And then she said, yeah. She would play just to have the Brain Dead racket, which is absolutely crazy to me. But I will take it. And so she will get the rainbow string. Opinion on Pros Pro string. I personally have not tried Pros Pro because there was simply too many reports of it being bad for tension maintenance. So I'm not going to waste my time and string something that has bad tension maintenance, only to string it again the next day. Because for me, like, okay, money is important. It's nice to save big money on a reel, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time stringing all of it more than I already have to. Like for me, I've strung thousands of rackets. Stringing is a chore. Some people, like Luca from Rackets and Runners, find it very therapeutic, but I do not. I find getting massages therapeutic, not stringing. Why do I even have Diablo Prism? It's because Oak sent it to me from Tennis Warehouse. So he sent me a bunch of print stuff. Because he's a good guy. And Tennis Warehouse has been great supporting me. Meeting all the people there was amazing. I'm sure you've heard me talk about that more than you ever wanted to, but I love Tennis Warehouse more than I ever thought possible. My favorite poly-poly hybrid at the moment remains Otoro Mains Sync Crosses, personally. Proline 2. I hate Proline 2. In a couple days, you'll have a almost 1 hour long polyester string tier list come out. And then so you'll be able to hear all of my scathing thoughts of over 100 different polyester strings. Yeah, 26 Great British Pounds for a reel is pretty undeniable value, but even at that price, like I think I've seen them for like 40 Canadian dollars before. Even at that price, I just like, I can't, it's not going to be good and I'm not going to enjoy using it. And so it's just not worth it for me. Oh yeah, okay, so I'll give you some thoughts on my Prince rackets. So right now I've got two like new Prince rackets. We've got the ATS Tour and where is my ripcord? Where is my ripcord? I suspect Simon has stolen the ripcord. So Simon and I both like both the ATS Tour 98 and the ripcord. The ripcord is a very, very nice racket, but it's really not a power racket. Like specs, it goes up to like a 27 millimeter beam in the tip. It's a 100 square inch frame. It's blue. You would think it's a power racket. It is not that powerful. The Pure Drive, my Rafa, this SX, I think are all more powerful and they're all more stable. And so that stability, that the loss in stability for me, because there's quite a bit of flex with this Prince despite the RA, but there's a decent amount of torsional flex off center. So like when you hit the ball here, you can really feel that you made contact there, which admittedly I like, but you get a very different response from in the middle. It's very much like a player's racket for a 100. And so I'm still kind of slowly figuring out what kind of setup I like in that racket. And I will eventually make a video for it. The ATS, it's just hard to find motivation to make a video for a racket that I know is not going to be watched very much. The ATS Tour 98 I do really enjoy. I think if I had tried that racket after I used the Extreme Tour, I probably would have switched to it, as many people of you viewers recommended that racket to me at that time. But for what I'm looking for now, which is edge-to-edge sweet spot to be as competitive as possible on a tennis court, it just doesn't do that. It's forgiveness-wise, it plays a lot like 95, that ATS Tour. Very similar performance overall to the V-Core 95, but with a little bit more of a connected feel, a little bit more Wilson-y, I suppose, old Wilson-y, a little bit more pro-staffy than the V-Core, not so muted. Both of them, epic spin, really love playing touch games with the ripcord, but it doesn't give me what I need when it comes to playing people who are high-level players, and, you know, finding that extra passing shot or finding that, you know, aggressive ball. 4G compared to Razor Code, I would say maybe I like 4G a bit more than Razor Code. Razor Code was not like super amazing for me. There was, I think I put the last racket I put it in was the Prince, and it was just too stiff for the Prince ripcord. That racket needs a slightly softer string to increase the forgiveness off center because it does twist a little bit. Any alternative for Focus Hex Ultra? I've never tried really any of the MSV strings. I have some here that, again, Oak sent me that I just haven't tried because it's like a soft string. And I have more things to try than I can manage. Roy Weiss, I'm guessing, is an O-port believer. So you really wanted to try the ripstick. Yeah, okay, so I watched, not the entire video, but I watched some clips from Zero Love's video on the Ripstick 98, where he criticized the O-port for not securing the string. And I can see how the string shifting positions and not returning back to its set position in the O-port would lead to an inconsistent playing experience. And so because of that, I'm a little bit hazy to try the O-ports. However, my main issue with the Ripstick is the off-center performance, and I know that having the O-ports would make the whole package a lot more forgiving. So I am interested to try it, but I'm not 100% on it, especially given, like, I still have the Gravity MP and Pro to review. I still have the two Princes to review. I have some string videos I want to do. I've got this blackout to take care of. I've got these diadem axes to review. So I don't really want to like have something to just sit in here to take up space and clog up my brain while I have all this other stuff to go through. And a lot of it, I'm like, do I actually end up putting out a video for some of this stuff? That's not super exciting to me. Like, I've been talking a lot about this with Jonas, like Tennis Nerd, and both of us felt pretty overwhelmed with the racket releases this year, and expectations maybe put on us by certain manufacturers to get stuff out on release days, and the grind to like see if we can both climb to the top of the view list. And so we both kind of were like, we're not gonna participate in the rat race for views, we're just gonna go with what works for us in terms of release. And I think we've both taken that to heart. Like, his publishing has been way more sporadic than previously, and I've stuck to my 1 week schedule, and I haven't done all reviews, although it kind of feels like it. It gets pretty boring to just review rackets over and over again, because a lot of them end up not being that interesting. And so it's hard to find the story with rackets sometimes, especially as, in 2025, and this has been happening for years, but rackets are converging and they're becoming all more and more similar to each other. So there's less of an interesting story to tell. And then the rackets that are interesting, they're not that popular, which is why rackets are converging. The string, this Prince poly is going to be way too soft for Simon. I already know he's not going to like it, but it was worth it for the memes. Okay, let's do another question. AC Tennis says a schedule could be helpful. Schedule can be helpful, but it can also be stressful. I'm sure everyone would like to see more AC Tennis reviews. All right, Tennis with Andy asks, when is Toraline coming out with Ochungus? I don't know. Probably not soon. I'm sure I could float that idea to Eric and he would be excited, but string development is not cheap. It's certainly something I've loosely explored in the past with manufacturers that I know that I like, but you're looking at $30 US roughly for an initial batch. Depends on the factory, I assume. Trey says I should post 1 video a day. And so I could definitely do that, but honestly, my blood pressure might explode my entire body. So Trey, like, you've been posting like 1 reel a day lately, which has been crazy. Has that been working for you? All right. Casper J. All-court player, uses spin, Radical MP23, 17, plays matches, looking to test a Toraline string. I would go for Toro maybe. I thought Toro was pretty good in the Radical. Help lift the ball a little bit because that racket can have a low launch angle. Yeah, definitely Aspera Tour Chungus. That will definitely happen. Now, I was looking at doing alternate color for Tour Sniper or something because I really like that string. I do have someone else who floated this idea loosely to me and said they'd be willing to cover the costs, but I gotta try the actual string, their current offerings, before I push forward with that. Certainly would like to have my own string, and long term like to have my own racket, because I think I could develop a pretty good racket and string, but that's for future me to worry about. Current me has to worry about not misweaving. Hi, am I a full-time stringer? No, I'm a full-time YouTuber. I don't string customer rackets. I will occasionally do customer customizations, but I don't really like stringing that much. And so I don't want to do it for $20 labor. Like, I could, if I really concentrated, I could make like $60 an hour stringing, but it's just not what I want to do, so I don't do it. 1 reel a day has grown your Instagram. Yeah. I sometimes wonder if Instagram pays that well, although, well, I know it doesn't really, but it's good for brand deals. That's the main appeal of Instagram, I think. But I'm pretty inconsistent with it. Like, if I want to post a short, I'll have like an idea, and then I'll like record 5 shorts in one day and then post them. But then I don't really get the same kind of satisfaction from creating and producing a short that I do from a long-term video. So that's why I often don't ever post shorts. Confidential main Enzo Pro as a cross in the Aero 98. I'm sure that would be fine. Enzo Pro gray for me personally. I had in the cross, like the mainstream ate it up. So I don't know if that's an issue with yellow as well, but that's why I'm not using Enzo Pro very often. I'm sure Super Toro and Absolute would work fine. Hyper G and Mach 10, I'm sure that would be fine too. I personally would go Mach 10 in the cross. I did Hyper G round in the cross with Mach 10 in the main, and the snapback just didn't last for very long. Whereas Mach 10 in a full bed lasts for a really long time. Confidential main, Mach 10 cross, snapbacks last for a really long time. So I would say Mach 10 should be the de facto cross for most hybrid applications from the Slinko range. Yes. So Leandro Nicholas says, a Casper in chat. Can you all believe we live in a world where Casper R is a Masters 1000 champion? I can't believe it. Watching his post-match interview, I don't know if he can fully believe it. There's a lot of the times where I've been watching Casper and thought, I don't know if he has the belief to really go far and play in the big moments. Like watching him basically roll over to Nadal in the French Open final, it didn't seem like he really had the belief that he was the top player. And I think you need to have this like borderline psychopathic belief in yourself that you could be the greatest of all time to back yourself in these moments. And I'd love to see Casper develop a little bit more of a psycho ego rather than this nice guy thing, just because I think that's exciting for rivalries and stuff. But I'm really glad that he won the tournament. I thought he had points where he was playing very, very Nadal-like, really commanding his forehand, playing great strategic tennis, although I'm sure to some of you it looks just like he's moonballing the whole time. But that was a strategic match. It was great playing by both players. And I hope Casper finds the confidence that he needs to maintain this controlled aggression through the rest of his matches and then can become a contender. I want all these players to play at their best because I think it leads to the best matches to watch. And that's more what I care about at this point when my hero, Rafael Nadal, is retired, and then I don't really have a player who I necessarily always root for. Yeah, so Jonathan asks, preference on softer main versus cross versus softer cross than main. That is what we talked about earlier in this video, and we will be testing. So this racket has soft main, stiff cross, O-Toro main, Razor Code cross. This one has stiff main, soft cross, Lynx Tour main, Ghostwire cross. So we're going to find out which is better as part of the video later this month, if I can recover my hips, which really hurt. AC Tennis is a Casper skeptic. He thinks he'll lose first round in Italy. Could definitely happen. Could also just randomly get upset at the French. I think the ATP is going through a transition phase right now, where we're going to see maybe for a little bit longer a lot of up and down by a lot of players, especially having Sinner gone. I think he's like the number one dominant force. He's the number one killer on the court. I think he's the one who believes in himself the most and wants to show up to every single tournament to win. So having him gone, I think, has really been a vacuum for the tour, and it'll be interesting to see how he comes back and how his presence kind of remotivates players to fight, not just to occupy an empty spot, but to fight to become better than Sinner. I think that's something Carlos was missing for a lot of earlier this year, was he just had to take the place in a vacated place. And now, but I think Carlos needs to take that place and fight for it to get the best tennis out of him. Can I recommend a string for Speed MP? Looking for control and you want a crisp, responsive feel. I feel like the obvious choice is just Lynx Tour. It's the same brand that makes your racket. It's a combo I've personally tested and it's played well. I need to count. Okay, thank you. I just had to count. And I can't talk and count in my head at the same time. Any other questions here? I'm going to get some water. PD 100 or Easy 100. I think after testing them both quite a bit, ultimately I prefer the Pure Drive 100. I had gotten to a place where I had really set up this E-Zone to be absolutely amazing. And then I took it back to stock to do our E-Zone 98 versus 100, and it just hasn't been the same since. I gotta find my notes on what spec I got this E-Zone up to play well for us. But at whatever it's at now, it's just not right. Whereas the Pure Drive 100, there's a much wider variety of weight setups and strength setups that I can use for me to enjoy using that racket. And I think I prefer the feel of the Pure Drive a little bit more. I think the control on the Pure Drive is a little bit better. It's more consistent across the string bed. Where power and comfort, not quite as good. Spin, not quite as good. But generally, I think the Pure Drive is a little bit more of a player's frame than the E-Zone 100, which is not something I would say about the last generation of E-Zone. I think now that I've had quite a bit of time to settle on these E-Zones, I'm not 100% sure if I would call this a successful update. Okay, yes. Are they sold out everywhere globally? 100%. They're sold out. You can't really get them that easily. But I think that's as much of an issue with Yonex' stocking as it is with the racket also being relatively hyped. Like the E-Zone, I think, was the most popular racket. It's been the most popular racket on my channel for sure in terms of like what videos get views, because Yonex has made such a solid product. But I think the way that they went with these E-Zones, muting them, really, I think, targeting extreme rec players, so like really going after this 3.5 market, has really limited the appeal of those two rackets to advanced players. And so I think they're going to lose a little bit of their magic. And well, they have lost a little bit of their magic. And is it the right direction for them in terms of sales for this term? Maybe. But long term, I think if they keep on this direction of muting and muddling the feel as things go on, making things play softer than they are, overdoing flex profiles in terms of throat flex, I think that is not the direction that modern tennis is going, especially at the high level, and that they might ultimately lose some top players. All right. Using 2022 Speed MP, Pong says, looking for more control while maintaining spin. More control, but retaining spin. Gravity Tour may be a little bit closer than the VCore 98. Also, if you're just looking for a bit of control, maybe it's also just worth changing strings. Like, I feel like a lot of people are very hasty to change rackets and they haven't tried enough string setups. It's cheaper to try strings than new racket. But if you just want a new racket, that's a different thing. Okay, clearly I'm getting tired and I'm not presenting as well, so this is going to be the last racket of the day. Warren B asks, do I know anything about the next gen VCore? No. I tried as best as I could to get a little bit of info from my Yonex contact. Best he would give me is, I know they're testing it. So I don't think they've finalized what they're doing with the next version of VCore. Yonex has been a little bit more under wraps in terms of what they're working on than a lot of other companies like Head, who they just leak like crazy. Thankfully, I'm lucky to have a pretty good relationship with my contact at Yonex now. So hopefully I'm able to test that as soon as possible, but it's not something I'm going to be able to give anyone early looks at. At this time, I think the channel is big enough. I'm at the point where I can't post leaks on message boards. I can't give you anything because people are, I don't necessarily get NDAs, but I'll have, a gentleman's agreement of please don't share. And so if I want to continue getting access to product to review and make video for you, then I can't really share stuff. And that sounds like I have a bunch of info on the Yonex stuff, and I promise you that I don't. He wouldn't tell me anything. I don't think he necessarily knew. Would I like it to be a 16 by 20 string pattern? Absolutely. Would I like it to be also 70 RA? Yeah, I would. If the current VCore 98 had a higher swing weight and stiffness, I'd probably be using it right now. But I could just never figure out the weight setup of that thing. All right. Warren B, you played doubles with the Yonex guy? Crazy. Small world. So Head increases price in the US. Rackets now $300. Aren't they increasing it to over $300 for pro models? Yeah, so the tariff situation in the US has been obviously consequential. Like, there's no way around it. We knew this was going to happen we didn't know. I think we didn't know that the tariffs were actually going to stay. They sort of seemed like empty threats, but they do seem here to stay. Unfortunately, it's hurting. It's going to hurt every single brand. There's no rackets made in the United States. There are some strings like Headhawk Power, I believe, is made in the US. But most of your strings are made in Germany or Taiwan or Japan. All rackets other than Yonex are made in China and certain pro stock heads, but it's not like you're going to be buying those. Head and Wilson have announced price increases. Technofiber is not shipping any more rackets to the US. I could see other manufacturers going that way. It seems like Babolat's just holding out for a bit, but I don't know what percentage it's at now because things change every day. There's simply no way that long-term manufacturers and retailers are going to be able to absorb those tariffs without passing them on to the United States. And if you don't like the tariffs, you're going to have to take advantage of your civic duties to get rid of them. I suspect that's just a world we're going to have to live in for the next 4 years unless something radical happens. It's probably... So I studied economics in university. This is one of the most fiscally irresponsible moves that the world has ever seen, especially the modern world. This whole tariff business, which in my opinion cements Donald Trump as the worst president the world has ever seen. And I've never been like an active Trump supporter, but I was not an active Trump hater either. Like, I 100% understand why he got elected, especially with how great his campaign was. But the way things have turned out and the way that he's governing in his second term, I think Americans should be extremely worried. And I've heard that he's working on the 2-term limit thing, changing that. So that's something I would be worried about. Well, I am worried about as a Canadian citizen who does a lot of business with American companies, and someone who's had the pleasure of going to the United States a lot in the last 6 months. Like, I love going to the US. I love going to California, visiting Austin. It was beautiful, but something that I've had to stop doing lately. Yeah, that's exactly why the tea fights are not stocked. I don't think that they will. If the tea fights come back in stock in the US, I suspect it will be after a significant price hike, potentially 25%, potentially more, potentially less, whatever the things with China end up turning into. I would just say that if you're not happy with the tariff situation and you're a US citizen, it's up to you to do something about it. If you just want to sit around and wait for it to go away, you might end up with a third term. Ever use the ERT 300? Yes, I have. I have one right here. I could use it right now. Well, I find myself not really using it that often unless I want to report tension maintenance to you. But I don't care what the tension droppage is if I don't feel it. If I can play through a tension droppage and like the drop off is gradual or I can adapt to it right away, I don't care. I don't care what the number is in terms of my tension loss. I care about what happens to me on court with tension loss. Yeah, pre-pandemic when stuff was cheap, that was nice. How about when balls were half the price they are now and they actually lasted? But that's the world we live in. We just got to get over it. Well, we don't have to get over it. There's stuff that you can do. Like, if you look at salary growth in the US and Canada over like 50 years, it's been horrible. Like, we're not making any more money than people were in the 2000s. All right. Oh, I'll answer this one more question about tennis shoes. I have no idea. I'm just stuck with horrible durability on my CT rallies. There's nothing I really like. It's not that easy to try stuff on sometimes. If I had a go-to shoe that I was super happy with, I would tell everyone, but I don't have anything that I absolutely love. Thanks so much for joining me on this live stream. That was almost 2 hours long. I need to rest my voice now before I have to go help Allie film something for her coaching course. So video coming out in 2 days. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, being a member, subscribing. A lot of members in this chat this time. If you want to be a member, you can sign up. There's like a ton of videos and content. If you just want to sign up for the month, we'll see you later. Boom.